Welcome to Biocomputation with Max. Today is Wednesday, June 18th, and I feel that it's necessary to discuss what's happening in Middle East. Let's get some facts straight. Israel cannot destroy Iran's nuclear program by itself. It didn't even try to attack the Fordo installation, which is buried some 100 meters underground. Nor can it guarantee regime change. The Prince by Machiavelli suggests that attacks that merely wound an enemy are counterproductive. So why would US and Israel choose this? Would President Trump be able to enjoy his birthday in the open ever again? After targeting Iranian leadership, military and political leadership and this recent sudden attack in which he claimed that he was not involved. But then he tweeted on Truth Social that Iran should have made a deal when they had a chance during the 60 days, and that attack occurred on day 61, which coincidentally was 2 days before a round of meetings for the 6th round of nuclear talks with Iranian envoys. The head envoy was assassinated by Israeli attacks. So let's now discuss comments by some of the principal in the conflict. Specifically, I want to look at history. So on June 12th, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio wrote that Israel started bombing Iran. He justified it with preemption. A few hours later, shortly before 6 a.m. on June the 13th, Trump tweeted for Iran to come to the table before it's too late. This message itself came too late, so I suppose it was meant to showcase his peace-loving nature, even though it came after the bombing has started. Similarly, Trump opined that he doesn't care about NSA's head Tulsi Gabbard stating in March under oath that Iran was not progressing with its nuclear program, that it had abandoned it. In fact, in 2003. And that's been the military assessment since 2007. Now, I found this surprising, and given what's happened, perhaps people could say it was imprudent for Iran to do this. But that was the assessment by the military intelligence, which Tulsi Gabbard has agreed with. Now, this does not square with 60% enriched uranium being produced which is by Iran, which is significantly higher than 20% that's necessary for any civilian use. Of course, the IAEA monitoring agency appears to have published a Trump charge recently, but Trump did not refer to that. He simply said he does not care about Tulsi Gabbard's assessment.
But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
Now, Trump also posted on Truth Social that everyone should leave Tehran, resulting in millions fleeing. This is a strange way to do foreign policy in the Middle East, especially considering that later he was asked about it on Air Force One, and he said he was merely concerned for people's safety. Later, Trump tweeted that Iran can still come to the table, but then he again said that they should take an unconditional surrender in capitals. So it's not clear exactly what would happen, but Ayatollah Khamenei replied that they would never surrender, nor is it clear how they would surrender. Ayatollah also stressed that Iran was attacked in the middle of negotiation, and while it has taken a lot of damage to its military program and nuclear scientists, it's not going to be dislodged by bombing alone. Iran has already said it's preparing for a long war. Now, the name of the operation is Rising Lion, and that refers to the Iranian flag during the rule of the Shah. It's clear that the operation was intended to lead to this internal uprising, but how can such a thing be sponsored? There are some precedents. One could argue that when Germans allowed Lenin to transit through Germany on the way to leading a revolution in Tsarist Russia, was such an example. However, the success of the revolution it cannot be ascribed solely to external forces. It had faced two military defeats, its people were hungry, and the country was a revolutionary Cold War. So when the connections of Lenin to Germans was reviewed, he had to flee temporarily, but later was able to come back and take over the revolution. In fact, Russia was the only country to lose the war on the side of the Allies when they capitulated to the Axis. So it could be said that he delivered. But there is another historical precedent that comes from USSR, and that's the attack by Germany in World War II. The Soviets suffered terrible defeats and were reeling under the onslaught. However, after a few weeks and months, the Blitzkrieg was defeated, was blunted, and it became a war of attrition, which the Germany could not win. Similarly, Israel has attacked the country more than 60 times its size and more than 9 times its population, some 1,000 miles away. Now, Jews have never been accused of being stupid. So what is the plan? What is US intention? It seems extremely unlikely that the situation would lead to internal revolution. It does seem likely that it would lead to a prolonged conflict. Now, in 2009, the Brookings Institution published Which Path to Persia, which predicted this exact path which we're now taking. Entering and breaking negotiations with Iran, blaming Iran. Then Israel attacks Iran and US wades in reluctantly. And that seems to be the option that we're going with. Disarming Iran militarily, which is chapter 5, their section to leave it to Bibi to start this attack. Now, there are other historical precedents we can look to, such as the Gulf of Tonkin false flag operation, which was started during Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency in 1964, and later destroyed his presidency. Vietnam also received assistance from both China and USSR at the time, although they were at odds. Now, Iran is in a much stronger position in Vietnam and could conceivably get help from either or both. Now, it's possible US will not join the fight to bomb Fordo. And this suggests that perhaps the real target is Iran's oil, which is powering China. The reasoning here could be simple. Neither regime change nor Iran's nuclear program destruction can be guaranteed by this very risky attack. So why initiate such a costly strategy without any direct ability to impact events on the ground? It just doesn't make sense. Our planners, are we to take them to be foolish gamblers who are unable to see these elements of the strategy? Speaking of strategy, in late 90s, Brzezinski wrote a book, The Grand Chessboard. Shortly before his death, he disavowed its imperialist ambitions, but it still was kind of part of American exceptionalism and our playbook. Now, looking at the current geopolitical situation as a chessboard, we can pose a hypothesis as to the real geopolitical target here being China. Now, oil infrastructure cannot be hidden underground and can be destroyed even by Israel in these tit-attack attacks. Of course, it would suffer tremendously, but China gets 16% of its seaborne crude oil from Iran. Iran sells 90% of its oil to China. So taking out this infrastructure would cripple the Iranian regime and the country. In fact, it would lead to the destruction of the nation, similar to what happened to Syria and Libya. These are 2 of the 7 countries that were targeted for regime change in a plan that was revealed by General Wesley Clark. Iran was the ultimate goal there for controlling the Middle East. So perhaps it is now the end game, but the real goal now feels like it's actually China. This will be revealed depending on what happens, not just to the oil infrastructure, but to the Fordo. If it's destroyed by itself and oil infrastructure remains, then indeed it will confirm that nuclear program was the target. If, however, both are destroyed, it's difficult to say. But if only oil is destroyed without U.S. wading into the conflict openly to take out Fordo, it would seem to confirm that surely the attack was against China. Now, this causus belli of last Sunday during the sixth round of these talks. The attack occurred on Friday morning, so a little bit over 2 days before. In other words, the talks have not yet broken down. So this is certainly destroying any trust in U.S. to make future deals.
We're Americans, we're simple people. But if you piss us off, we'll bomb your cities. Think about that.
Described U.S. as being non-agreement capable. This is a problem because it precludes the negotiated settlement. How could Iran surrender? And Ayatollah Khamenei even said so in his tweets. Now, you don't have to like him to see where this is going. Would Iran, fall to this demand for unconditional surrender? It's unlikely. Japan was kept in the fight long after it should have left during World War II, when unconditional surrender was called for. So we're unlikely to have a short conflict. Will U.S. attack Iran now? We've moved 2 carrier groups with 5 destroyers, and they're joined by a British carrier, Prince of Wales. There are some 30 refueling airplanes moving to the theater. Also, of course, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is presenting this as merely a defensive posture. And so perhaps Iran will be allowed to basically handle Israel just like Russia is handling Ukraine without direct U.S. intervention. This is what could happen if the U.S., if Iran is not defeated quickly. How could it be defeated quickly remotely? It's unlikely. It's more likely to cause a long war, similar perhaps to the conflict in the Ukraine. Now, this attack strengthens the argument for obtaining bomb by Iran and weakens anyone there who wants to negotiate with the US or Israel. In fact, dialogue proponents are probably keeping extremely quiet now. So what does that mean for democracy? Trump may never be able to hold an open air parade again. And what are we gaining for this? He may have to install electronic warfare at Mar-a-Lago. And again, the purpose of this is unclear. So what is the real goal of attack by Israel on Iran at this time? Is it just an opportunity that was taken? Again, the goals, as stated, are unlikely to be fulfilled. The worst case scenario would be an extremely upset country. So the lion that arises may not do the bidding of those who provoked it, but may in fact bite the attackers. So this gambit, I should say, chess, to use a chess analogy, doesn't make sense in isolation. So to follow all of this concept of the grand chessboard, I think China is the ultimate target, perhaps the king on this chessboard. So while Iran is pinned by Israel and Russia is pinned by Ukraine, China is isolated. In this analogy, both Ukraine and Israel could be sacrificed to the goals of maintaining Western hegemony. Now, if Iran were to fall quickly, we could expect to see perhaps friction in the South China Sea, but I think it's unlikely, and it's more likely that Iran will become Trump's Vietnam, impede his MAGA dreams, just like Vietnam impeded Johnson's Great Society aspirations. So why would Trump go against his promises to his base not to get involved in foreign wars? Why would he sacrifice prosperity? And his duplicity also and mendacity is revealed in his tweets, such as, gloating about day 61, which we should be very proud of.
So I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that. And they got hit. Remember 60 days? And then came the 60. 61 is going to become a very famous number. That was one hell of a hit, that first hit. That was one hell of a hit. Not sustainable, to be honest. That's where it ended. It ended on the first night.
So is he a willing servant of the hegemony and is willing to risk his presidency and his legacy? The situation is not even obviously or technically about the nuclear bomb, because now it's about enrichment, which is technically allowed under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran is a signatory. Of course, they exceeded those levels, and Ayatollah did threaten to wipe Israel off the map. So this is perhaps a reasonable casus belli. But as I mentioned, Trump's security advisor, as recently as in March, said that Iran wasn't trying to build a nuclear bomb, and Trump said he doesn't care. So he didn't mention IAEA. So it seems that it's more than about a nuclear weapon or about nuclear enrichment. Certainly, this seems to be a thin reed to justify its attack. This is in particular a thin reed when considering that it was a sudden attack during negotiations, which included decapitation strikes. On the other hand, the West and Trump continues to both maintain that it knew nothing about it while bragging about it. And we also want to maintain that a Russian attack on Ukraine was purely unprovoked aggression, ignoring the fact that there was obvious NATO expansion, which was promised would not happen. And in fact, there was a kind of ultimatum that Biden ignored and laughed at in December 2021, which could have avoided this conflict. But instead, Biden chose to laugh and taunt at the Russians. Now, Trump recently admitted in a video that there was one spectacular day of Israeli attacks, but they may not have resources to make this last more than 1 or 2 weeks. So it's perhaps very reasonable that Tucker Carlson is questioning our strategy, but Trump pushed back on Tucker Carlson recently strongly for questioning the war towards Iran. So this push for the conflict could be a death knell for his presidency. Is Trump not aware? Are his advisors not telling him that credibility with the pro-peace camp of the MAGA movement is at stake, and certainly his ability to deliver material benefits and broad-based prosperity is at stake? And if his agenda is defeated, Trump's detractors will be invigorated and will probably take over Congress and try to impeach him, and will in fact write his legacy in dark colors. So the costs in the medium and long term are tremendous. And it would seem, if properly advised, Trump would not be doing this. So he seems to be falling for one view that Iranian missile response and air defense appear to have weakened in the recent days, and that's a sign that they are being defeated. However, there is another view that Iran is husbanding these resources for potential intervention by the United States to respond or potentially to deter them. So that's quite indistinguishable. What is, I think, likely is that Iran would resist as strongly as it can for as long as it can, And as always in such situations, will not be compelled to give up from the air only. So what is driving Trump's decisions? It's likely overconfidence and belief in short and sharp conflict that could be removed and he could move on to China and achieve the real threat, his real goals. But I think the connection with Iran's oil and China's ability to withstand United States and its antagonism is a key reason why this attack is happening now. So hopefully wise heads will prevail and US will chart a path that not only benefits the region, but itself. Thank you, and join me again next time.